Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty as it drifted through space near Jupiter. The year was 2087 and humanity had just started to explore beyond their home solar system. Jake watched the stars through the main window and felt proud of how far his species had come. The Liberty was one of the newest exploration ships, and Jake had been chosen to command it because of his excellent record. "Captain, we are picking up some strange signals from Earth," said Lieutenant Amy Clark from her station. She looked worried. As she checked her instruments again, the signals are not coming from any human source. Jake walked over to Amy's station and looked at the data on her screen. The readings showed massive objects appearing in Earth's atmosphere above major cities. These objects were huge, much larger than anything humans had ever built. Jake felt his heart start to beat faster as he realized what this might mean. "Get me a direct link to Earth Command right away," Jake ordered. The crew worked quickly to establish communication with their home planet. When the connection was made, they could see chaos on the screens. Cities were burning and people were running in the streets. General Alex Hayes appeared on the communication screen. His uniform was torn and his face was covered with dirt and blood. "Jake, thank God you are out there," Alex said quickly. "We are under attack by alien forces. They call themselves the Zephyrian Empire, and they have technology far beyond ours." Jake could hardly believe what he was hearing. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, but they never expected first contact to happen like this. "What do they want from us?" Jake asked. "They want us to become their slaves," Alex replied. "Their leader, someone called Veltar, gave us an ultimatum. We either submit to their rule or they will destroy every human on Earth. Our weapons are useless against their shields and their ships are too fast for us to hit." On the screen behind Alex, Jake could see explosions lighting up the sky. The alien ships looked like giant metal insects with glowing blue lights running along their sides. They moved through the air without making any sound, and their weapons turned entire city blocks into ash within seconds. "We need you to stay hidden out there," Alex continued. "Do not come back to Earth. Find other human colonies and warn them about what is happening. We will try to hold them off as long as we can." Before Jake could respond, the communication was cut off. The screen went black and all they could hear was static. Jake looked around at his crew and saw the fear in their eyes. They all had families on Earth, and now they did not know if those people were still alive. "Sir, what are our orders?" asked Lieutenant Ben Cooper, the ship's weapons officer. His voice shook as he spoke. Jake took a deep breath and tried to think clearly. He knew that the Liberty was not a warship and could not fight against the alien forces, but he also knew that someone had to survive to tell the story of what happened. "To Earth we follow Alex's orders," he said. "We go to Mars colony and warn them about the invasion." The journey to Mars took 6 hours at full speed. During that time they tried many times to contact Earth but got no response. When they arrived at Mars, they found the colony in chaos. The people there had seen the lights from Earth's direction and knew something terrible had happened. Jake met with Kate Johnson, who was in charge of the Mars colony. She was a strong woman who had been living on Mars for 10 years. "We saw the flashes from Earth," she said. "How bad is it?" "The worst you can imagine," Jake replied. He told her everything that Alex had said about the alien invasion and the ultimatum. Kate's face went pale as she listened to the details. "We need to prepare for the worst," Kate said. "If they conquered Earth in hours, they will come for us. Next, we have to find places to hide and ways to fight back." Over the next few days, reports came in from other human settlements throughout the solar system. The Zephyrians had indeed taken complete control of Earth. They had built massive prison camps and were sorting humans like cattle. The strong were sent to work in mines on asteroids, while the smart ones were forced to work in research facilities. Dr. Emma Collins, a scientist who had been studying quantum physics on Earth, found herself trapped in one of these research facilities. She was forced to work on projects that would make the alien technology even more powerful. But Emma was clever and she began to notice things about the alien technology that the Zephyrians did not want her to see. The invasion was complete and humanity had fallen, but some humans were still free and they would not give up without a fight. They did not know it yet, but their greatest test was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrians conquered Earth, and Ben Taylor could feel his body getting weaker every day. He stood in the cold mining facility on Titan, watching human workers dig rare minerals from the frozen ground. The alien overseers walked among them with electric whips, striking anyone who moved too slowly or complained about the harsh conditions. Ben had been a construction supervisor before the invasion, building homes and schools for happy families. Now he supervised broken people who worked 16 hours a day just to earn a small bowl of food. Many of the workers were getting sick from the poisonous air in the mines, and some had already died from exhaustion. "Keep working," shouted Zarkoth, the alien supervisor. His voice came through a translation device that made him sound like a machine. "The Empire needs these minerals, and weak humans are easy to replace." Ben watched as an old man named Pete stumbled and fell. Pete had been a teacher on Earth, and now his hands were bleeding from digging in the rocks all day. Zarkoth raised his whip to strike Pete, but Ben stepped forward quickly. "Please, he is just tired," Ben said. "Give him a moment to rest and he will work harder." Zarkoth looked at Ben with his 4 yellow eyes. The alien's skin was gray and covered with scales that reflected the dim light in the mine. "You care too much about these weak ones, human Taylor. This weakness will be removed from your species in time." Back on Earth, Dr. Emma Collins worked in a research facility that had once been a university. The Zephyrians had converted the classrooms into laboratories where human scientists were forced to study alien technology. Emma spent her days looking at strange devices that used energy sources she had never seen before. The aliens watched her every move through cameras in the walls, but Emma was very careful. She had discovered something important about their technology, and she needed to share it with other humans without the aliens knowing. The Zephyrian devices all used the same type of quantum frequency, and human brains seemed to be able to sense these frequencies in a way that other species could not. "Dr. Rodriguez," Emma whispered to the man working at the table next to her. Sam Rodriguez had been a military engineer before the invasion, and he understood both weapons and communication systems. "I need to show you something, but we must be very careful." Sam nodded and moved his chair closer to Emma's table. She had drawn some diagrams on a piece of paper that looked like mathematical equations, but actually showed how human thoughts could interfere with Zephyrian technology. Sam studied the drawings, and his eyes grew wide as he understood what Emma was suggesting. "This could change everything," Sam whispered back. "But how do we test it without them knowing?" Emma pointed to a small communication device on her table. "Tonight, when they think we are sleeping, we try to send a message using this frequency. If it works, we can contact other humans in different facilities." Meanwhile, on Mars Colony, Kate Johnson was leading a group of humans who had managed to avoid capture. They lived in underground tunnels that the Zephyrians had not discovered yet. Kate had been a colony administrator, but now she was learning to be a resistance leader. "We got a signal from the asteroid belt," said Paul Martinez, who was operating their hidden communication equipment. "It was very weak, but it definitely came from humans." Kate felt hope for the first time in months. If humans in other parts of the solar system were still free, maybe they could work together to fight back against the Zephyrians. "Can you send a signal back to them?" she asked. "I can try, but the aliens might detect it," Paul replied. "Their ships patrol this area every few days looking for signs of human activity." Kate thought about the risk. If the Zephyrians found their hiding place, everyone in the tunnels would be captured or killed. But if they could not communicate with other free humans, they would never be able to organize any kind of resistance. "Send the signal," Kate decided. "We have to take the chance." Captain Jake Morrison was hiding his ship in the asteroid belt. When Paul's message reached him, the Liberty had been damaged in a fight with a Zephyrian patrol, and Jake's crew was working to repair the engines. When they received Kate's signal, Jake felt relief that some humans on Mars were still alive. "Can we trust this signal?" asked Lieutenant Amy Clark. "It might be a trap set by the aliens." Jake studied the message carefully. It contained information that only someone from Mars Colony would know. "I think it is real," he said. "Prepare a response, but keep it short. We do not want to give away our position." Back on Earth, General Alex Hayes sat in a prison cell with other captured military officers. The Zephyrians had been torturing him for information about human military secrets, but Alex refused to tell them anything. His body was covered with scars from the alien torture devices, but his spirit remained strong. "You will break eventually," said Veltar, the Zephyrian commander. "All species do when they realize the power of our empire. Your resistance only causes more suffering for your people." Alex looked up at the alien leader with defiant eyes. "You do not understand humans if you think pain will make us give up. Every time you hurt us, you make us more determined to fight back." Veltar studied the human general with curiosity. His species had conquered dozens of worlds and never encountered such stubborn resistance. Most species surrendered completely, within weeks of being defeated, but these humans seemed to get stronger when they faced hardship. "We shall see," Veltar said as he left the cell. "Your species will learn to serve the Empire like all the others." But Veltar was wrong about humans, and he would learn this lesson in the months to come. Emma and Sam successfully tested their quantum communication method and began secretly contacting humans and facilities around the world. Ben organized small acts of sabotage in the mining operations. Kate established contact with resistance groups. On 3 different planets, the Zephyrians thought they had broken humanity, but they had only made them more united than ever before. The chains that bound them would soon become the tools of their liberation. 1 year after the invasion, Tony Martinez stood at his workstation in the weapons factory on Earth. The Zephyrians had converted human factories to produce equipment for their empire. Tony had been an automechanic before the war, and now he was forced to build alien weapons that would be used to conquer other worlds. But Tony was not just building weapons. Every few days he would make small changes to the components that would cause the weapons to fail after a short time. He was very careful to make these changes look like natural defects so the alien supervisors would not suspect sabotage. "Martinez, your production numbers are down again," said the alien supervisor. "The Empire expects better efficiency from this facility." "Sorry, sir," Tony replied, keeping his eyes down. "The machines have been having problems lately. Maybe they need better maintenance." Kikalon walked away muttering about stupid humans and their primitive technology. Tony smiled to himself as he continued his work. The alien did not know that Tony had been secretly damaging the machines to slow down production. In another part of the city, Nancy Foster was teaching a group of human children in what used to be a school. The Zephyrians allowed some education for human children, but they only wanted them to learn how to serve the Empire. Nancy was supposed to teach the children to obey alien orders and forget about human history and culture. Instead, Nancy was secretly teaching them about the great humans who had lived before the invasion. She told them stories about explorers who traveled to unknown lands, scientists who made great discoveries, and leaders who fought for freedom. She had to be very careful because alien monitors watched the classrooms. "Today we will learn about mathematics," Nancy said in a loud voice for the monitors to hear. Then she whispered to the children, "But first, let me tell you about a brave woman named Rosa Parks who refused to give up her seat on a bus." The children listened with wide eyes as Nancy told them how one person's courage could change the world. These lessons gave the children hope that someday humans would be free again. Dr. Emma Collins had been working for months to perfect her quantum communication system. She and Dr. Sam Rodriguez had successfully contacted dozens of research facilities around Earth and even some on other planets. They discovered that humans everywhere were finding ways to resist their captors. "Emma, I have amazing news," Sam whispered as he sat down next to her in the laboratory. "The humans on Jupiter's moon Europa have figured out how to disrupt neural interfaces. They tested it on a small patrol ship last week, and it worked." Emma felt her heart race with excitement. The neural interfaces were how the Zephyrians controlled their ships and weapons. If humans could disrupt these interfaces on a large scale, they might be able to level the playing field. "We need to get this information to every resistance group in the solar system," Emma said. "Can your communication network reach that far?" "I think so," Sam replied, "but we will need more power and we risk being detected by the aliens." Emma thought about the risk. If they were caught, they would certainly be executed and their research would be destroyed. But if they did nothing, humanity would remain enslaved forever. "Let's do it," she decided. "We have to try." Captain Jake Morrison had spent months moving between different asteroid mining stations, gathering intelligence about Zephyrian operations. His ship Liberty had been heavily modified with stealth technology that he and his crew had developed using captured alien components. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission on the quantum frequency," reported Lieutenant Amy Clark. "It's coming from Earth." Jake listened as Emma's voice came through the speaker, explaining how to disrupt Zephyrian neural interfaces. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. If they could coordinate attacks on multiple Zephyrian facilities at the same time, they might be able to deal serious damage to the occupation forces. "Set course for the Mars colony," Jake ordered. "We need to meet with Kate Johnson and plan our next move." On Mars, Kate Johnson had been building a network of resistance fighters throughout the colony. They had weapons hidden in secret locations, and they had been training for the day when they could strike back at their oppressors. When Jake arrived with the new intelligence, Kate knew the time had come. "We can hit 3 facilities at once," Kate explained as she pointed to a map of the colony, the command center, the communication array, and the weapons depot. "If we can capture all 3, we can hold the colony long enough to evacuate civilians to the outer planets." General Alex Hayes had been planning his own operation from his prison cell on Earth over the months. He had been communicating with other prisoners using a code based on tapping on the walls. They had discovered that the guards changed shifts at the same time every day, and there was a 15-minute window when the security was weakest. "Tonight is our chance," Alex tapped to the prisoner in the next cell. "Are you ready?" The response came back quickly. "Ready for humanity." Alex smiled grimly. He knew that even if they succeeded in escaping, their chances of survival were very small. But they had to try because other humans needed to know that resistance was possible. Ben Taylor had been organizing the workers in the Titan mining facility for weeks. He had identified the strongest and most determined humans and slowly built a network of people willing to fight. They had been stealing tools and hiding them in the mine tunnels, preparing for a revolt. "Tomorrow, when the morning shift starts, we make our move," Ben told his trusted friends. "We take the control room first, then seal the mine entrances. If we can hold out for a few hours, maybe the resistance on other worlds will hear about it and know that we have not given up." Pete, the old teacher who Ben had protected from the alien whip, nodded his agreement. "Even if we fail, we will show them that humans do not break easily." That night, Nancy Foster was arrested by Zephyrian security forces. One of the alien monitors had recorded her telling the children about human heroes. As they dragged her away, Nancy shouted to her students, "Remember what I taught you. Never stop believing in freedom." The children watched with tears in their eyes as their teacher was taken away, but they would remember her lessons, and someday they would pass those lessons on to their own children. Across the solar system, the seeds of defiance that had been planted during the long months of occupation were finally ready to grow. Humans everywhere were preparing to strike back against their oppressors. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew that freedom was worth any sacrifice. The Zephyrians had wanted to break the human spirit, but instead they had forged it into something stronger than they could imagine. 18 months after the invasion, Dr. Emma Collins made a discovery that would change everything. She was working in her laboratory when she noticed that the neural inhibitors the Zephyrians had implanted in human prisoners were beginning to malfunction. The devices were supposed to suppress human creativity and independent thought, but Emma's brain seemed to be adapting to them. "Sam, come look at this." Emma called to Dr. Rodriguez. She showed him the brain scan readings that she had been secretly taking of herself and other prisoners. "The inhibitors are losing their effectiveness. Our brains are actually rewiring themselves to work around the alien technology." Sam studied the data with amazement. "This is incredible, Emma. It's like our consciousness is too complex for their devices to fully control. The quantum manipulation abilities that made us valuable to them are also making us impossible to break completely." Emma nodded as she realized the full implications of her discovery. "We need to get this information to the resistance networks immediately. If the Zephyrians don't know about this yet, we have a window of opportunity." Meanwhile, in the underground tunnels of Mars Colony, Maria Santos was coordinating with resistance groups across the solar system. Maria had been a communications officer before the invasion, and now she was the central hub for human resistance activities. Her network had grown from a few dozen people to millions of humans who appeared to obey their captors but were secretly working to undermine them. "We have confirmation from 12 different worlds," Maria reported to Kate Johnson. "The neural inhibitors are failing everywhere. Humans who have been docile for months are suddenly remembering who they are and what they're fighting for." Kate felt a surge of hope that she had not experienced since the invasion began. "How many people are we talking about?" "At least 50 million humans are now partially or completely free from mental control," Maria replied. "And the number is growing every day. The Zephyrians haven't noticed yet because people are being very careful to hide their recovery." On the outer edge of the solar system, pilot Steve Parker was working as a mechanic in a Zephyrian repair facility. Steve had been captured 6 months earlier when his fighter was shot down, but the aliens thought he was just a simple technician. They had no idea that Steve was one of the best pilots in the human fleet. Steve had been studying Zephyrian technology during his captivity, and he had discovered something important. The alien ships had powerful weapons and shields, but their maneuvering systems had a critical flaw. There was a brief moment during combat turns when their defensive fields had to adjust, leaving them vulnerable to attack. "If I could get my hands on one of their fighters," Steve thought as he worked on a damaged Zephyrian craft, "I could test this weakness and maybe find a way to exploit it." The opportunity came sooner than expected. A damaged fighter was brought in for emergency repairs, and Steve was assigned to work on it alone. The pilot had been injured and was in the medical bay, leaving the ship unguarded. Steve looked around carefully to make sure no one was watching, then climbed into the pilot's seat. The Zephyrian controls were different from human technology, but Steve had been studying them for months. He managed to start the engines and carefully flew the fighter out of the repair bay. Once he was in open space, Steve tested his theory about the defensive systems. He was right. During tight turns, the ship's shields had to reconfigure, and there was a gap of almost 2 seconds when they were vulnerable. Steve smiled as he realized that human pilots could exploit this weakness if they were fast enough and brave enough. "I need to get this information back to our people," Steve said to himself as he set course for the asteroid belt where he hoped to find Captain Morrison back on Earth. The Zephyrians were beginning to notice that something was wrong. Production in the factories was declining, and there were more accidents in the mining operations. Commander Veltar called a meeting with his senior officers to discuss the situation. "The humans are becoming less efficient," reported Colonel Drachma. "Some of our overseers think they are deliberately sabotaging operations." Veltar considered this possibility. "Increase the punishment levels and execute 10 humans from each facility that reports problems. This will remind them of the consequences of defiance." But the executions had the opposite effect that Veltar intended. Instead of frightening humans into submission, the deaths of innocent people made the resistance fighters more determined than ever. Tony Martinez watched as 10 of his fellow workers were killed for crimes they did not commit, and he felt anger burning in his chest like a fire. "They think fear will control us," Tony whispered to his friend Carl during their meal break. "But they're just showing us what monsters they really are." The resistance networks received word about the executions within hours. Maria Santos coordinated a response that would show the Zephyrians that human spirit could not be broken by brutality. Across the solar system, resistance groups launched simultaneous attacks on alien supply lines and communication stations. The attacks were small but coordinated, hitting dozens of targets at exactly the same time. The Zephyrians were caught completely off guard because they had not realized how well organized the human resistance had become. Several alien outposts were destroyed and important intelligence was captured before the resistance fighters disappeared. Back into hiding, President Lisa Carter had been hiding in underground bunkers on Earth for over a year, constantly moving to avoid capture. She had been working with General Hayes and other military leaders to maintain some form of government. In exile, when she learned about the coordinated attacks, Lisa knew it was time to make her presence known to the human population. Captain Morrison and his crew had successfully captured a Zephyrian communication relay station in the asteroid belt. They used the alien equipment to broadcast a message to every human settlement in the solar system. The message was brief but powerful. Their president was still alive and still fighting for their freedom. "My fellow humans," Lisa's voice rang out across the cosmos. "I know you have suffered under alien occupation. I know many of you have lost hope. But I want you to know that we have not surrendered and we will never surrender. The resistance is real, it is growing, and we will be free again." The broadcast lasted only 3 minutes before Zephyrian forces located the relay station and cut off the signal. But 3 minutes was enough. Humans everywhere heard their president's voice and remembered that they were not alone in their struggle. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered many worlds over the centuries, but they had never encountered a species like humanity. Other races had either submitted completely or been destroyed quickly when they resisted. But humans seem to get stronger under pressure, like metal that becomes harder when it is heated and hammered. Veltar studied reports from across the occupied territories, and felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. His forces were reporting increased stress levels, and some Zephyrian soldiers were even requesting transfers away from human-occupied zones. The constant resistance was wearing down alien morale in ways that the Empire had never seen. "Perhaps we underestimated this species," Veltar admitted to himself as he looked out at the burning cities of Earth. "But it is too late to change course now. We must break them completely or destroy them entirely." But humanity would not be broken, and they were becoming too strong to be destroyed. The fire within them burned brighter every day, fed by courage, hope, and an unshakable belief that freedom was worth any sacrifice. 2 years after the invasion, General Alex Hayes stood in a hidden command center on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. He had been rescued 3 months earlier during a daring raid led by Captain Morrison and Maria Santos. Now Alex was in charge of the unified human resistance forces that had grown from scattered groups into a real military organization. "General, we have confirmation that the quantum weapon project is on schedule," reported Dr. Emma Collins via secure communication. Emma had been transferred to Europa after her research became too important to risk keeping her on Earth. All 7 installations are ready for the final phase of construction. Alex nodded as he studied the holographic display showing resistance operations across the solar system. The quantum weapon that Emma had designed would create a massive disruption in Zephyrian neural networks, but it required enormous amounts of energy and perfect timing to work properly. They would only get one chance to use it. What about the reverse-engineered technology? Alex asked. Are our people ready to use Zephyrian weapons against them? Better than ready, replied Captain Morrison from his position near Saturn. Steve Parker has been training our pilots on captured fighters and they're becoming incredibly skilled. The alien ships are faster and more powerful than ours, but our pilots are more creative and adaptable. Steve Parker had become a legend among the resistance fighters after stealing the Zephyrian craft and discovering the weakness in their defensive systems. He had trained hundreds of human pilots in the tactics needed to exploit this flaw, and they had won several small battles against alien patrols. The Resistance had also been working on another crucial project. Nancy Foster's former students, who were now young adults, had grown up understanding both human values and Zephyrian technology. These young people had an intuitive grasp of how to use alien devices in ways their creators never intended. The youth brigades are our secret weapon, explained Kate Johnson during a strategy meeting. They think differently than we do because they grew up during the occupation. They see possibilities that older fighters missed. One of these young fighters was Lisa Chen, who had been only 12 years old when the invasion began. Now she was 21 and led a team of tech specialists who could hack Zephyrian systems faster than anyone thought possible. Lisa had learned from Nancy Foster's lessons about human courage and from 6 years of studying alien technology. General Hayes, my team has infiltrated the main Zephyrian data network, Lisa reported. We've discovered that they're calling for reinforcements from their home system. A massive fleet is heading toward Earth and should arrive in about 4 months. Alex felt his stomach tighten at this news. The Resistance had been planning Operation Phoenix, a coordinated campaign to liberate the labor camps and research facilities. But if a large Zephyrian fleet arrived before they were ready, all their progress could be wiped out. How long do we need to complete the quantum weapon network? Alex asked Emma. At least 6 months if we want it to work properly, Emma replied. We could rush it and have something ready in 4 months, but the chances of success would be much lower. Alex had to make a difficult decision. If they waited for the weapon to be perfected, the new Zephyrian fleet might overwhelm them before they could use it. But if they launched Operation Phoenix now, they might be able to weaken the occupation forces enough to survive the reinforcements. We proceed with Phoenix, Alex decided. We'll start liberating the camps and facilities immediately. If we can free enough humans and capture enough equipment, we might be able to complete the weapon project faster. The decision to launch Operation Phoenix early was risky, but it proved to be the right choice. Human resistance fighters attacked Zephyrian facilities across the solar system with a coordination and skill that amazed even their enemies. Ben Taylor led a successful revolt at the Titan mining complex, capturing not only the facility but also 3 alien transport ships. Tony Martinez used his knowledge of factory systems to sabotage weapons production on Earth, while simultaneously leading attacks on alien supply depots. The Resistance fighters moved like ghosts, striking hard and fast before disappearing into hiding places that the Zephyrians could never find. Maria Santos coordinated the information flow between different Resistance cells, making sure that each attack supported the others. Her communication network had become so sophisticated that humans could share intelligence across the entire solar system in real time, while staying completely hidden from alien detection. The humans are fighting like they have nothing to lose, reported Colonel Drachma to Commander Veltar. Our casualties are mounting and morale among our forces is at an all-time low. Some units are requesting immediate evacuation from human territories. Veltar could hardly believe what he was hearing. The Zephyrian Empire had never faced a situation where their own soldiers wanted to retreat from a conquered world, but the constant pressure from human resistance was unlike anything they had encountered before. Increase security at all facilities and execute any human found with weapons or communication devices, Veltar ordered. We must break their spirit before the reinforcement fleet arrives. But the executions only made humans more determined to fight. President Lisa Carter, who had been successfully rescued during one of the raids, broadcast another message to human settlements throughout the galaxy. Her words were simple but powerful. Every death makes us stronger. Every loss reminds us why we fight. We will not surrender. The Resistance achieved its greatest victory when Captain Morrison led a joint operation to capture a Zephyrian command ship near Jupiter. The ship contained detailed information about alien military tactics and technology, as well as the exact arrival time of the reinforcement fleet. This intelligence is worth more than all our previous victories combined, Morrison reported to General Hayes. We now know exactly what we're up against and when they'll arrive. Dr. Emma Collins used the captured technology to make crucial improvements to the quantum weapon design. With better understanding of Zephyrian neural networks, she was able to create a more efficient system that required less power and could be built more quickly. We can have the weapon ready in 3 months now, Emma announced. The captured data showed us shortcuts that will save weeks of development time. As Operation Phoenix continued, something unexpected began happening throughout the Empire. Other species that had been conquered by the aliens started their own rebellions. Reports reached Earth of uprisings on dozens of worlds as news of human resistance spread across the galaxy. We're not just fighting for our own freedom anymore, General Hayes told his officers. We've become a symbol of hope for every enslaved species in the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire is facing rebellions on multiple fronts for the first time in their history. Commander Veltar received similar reports and felt fear creeping into his mind. The empire that had seemed unbeatable was suddenly fighting wars across hundreds of worlds. The human resistance had done more than save themselves. They had inspired a galaxy-wide revolution. Prepare all remaining forces for the final assault on human positions, Veltar ordered. When our reinforcements arrive, we will destroy every human settlement in the solar system. This species has become too dangerous to be allowed to survive. But humanity was ready for the final battle. They had risen from the ashes of defeat to become something the Zephyrians had never faced before, a united people with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The reinforcement fleet was coming, but humans would be waiting for them with weapons, courage, and an unbreakable determination to be free. 3 years after the invasion, humanity was ready for the final battle. Dr. Emma Collins stood in the control center on Europa, watching as the last components of the quantum weapon network came online. 7 installations hidden across the solar system were now synchronized and ready to strike at the heart of Zephyrian technology. All stations report, ready, announced Lisa Chen from her position at the communication console. The young woman who had grown up during the occupation was now one of the most skilled technicians in the Resistance. We can activate the network on your command, Dr. Collins. Emma felt the weight of 3 years of suffering and struggle pressing down on her shoulders. Millions of humans had died during the occupation, and many more had endured unspeakable hardships. This weapon represented their only hope of freedom. But if it failed, humanity would face complete extinction. Not yet, Emma replied. We wait for President Carter's signal. President Lisa Carter was aboard Captain Morrison's flagship, the restored USS Liberty. As it drifted in the shadow of an asteroid near Earth, through the view screen she could see the massive Zephyrian reinforcement fleet approaching their home planet. The alien ships were larger and more numerous than anything humanity had ever faced. How many ships are we looking at? Lisa asked General Hayes, who stood beside her studying the enemy formation. At least 3,000 warships, Alex replied, grimly, plus support vessels and troop transports. They're planning to finish us once and for all. Captain Morrison activated the ship's communication system and opened a channel to every human settlement in the solar system. All units, this is Liberty. The enemy fleet is in position. Prepare for Operation Unbreakable. Across the solar system, humans prepared for what everyone knew would be their last battle. Ben Taylor led his miners in taking control of the asteroid defense platforms. Tony Martinez and his factory workers emerged from hiding with weapons they had been secretly building. For months, Maria Santos coordinated with resistance cells on dozens of worlds as they prepared for simultaneous attacks. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship as it entered Earth's atmosphere. The planet below was scarred by 3 years of occupation, but it would soon be nothing but ash and radiation. He had decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to exist anywhere in the galaxy. Begin the sterilization protocol, Veltar ordered. Destroy every human settlement and military installation. Leave nothing alive. The Zephyrian fleet began its final assault, raining destruction down on Earth's surface. Cities that had survived the occupation were turned into craters within minutes. But the aliens did not know that most humans had already evacuated to hidden shelters deep underground and in space stations scattered throughout the system. Now, Lisa, President Carter spoke into her communicator. Give the signal, President. Carter's voice echoed across the solar system as she delivered the most important speech in human history. My fellow humans, for 3 years we have endured slavery, torture, and death at the hands of our oppressors. They wanted to break our spirit and make us forget who we are. Instead, they have forged us into something stronger than we ever imagined possible. Today we show them that humanity is truly unbreakable. The moment her speech ended, Dr. Collins activated the quantum weapon network. 7 installations fired simultaneously, sending synchronized pulses of energy across the solar system. The pulses were invisible to normal sensors, but they struck directly at the quantum frequencies that controlled Zephyrian neural networks. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the alien fleet, soldiers collapsed as their neural interfaces overloaded. Ship systems went offline as their organic computer core suffered cascading failures. Within minutes, the most powerful military force in galactic history was reduced to helpless metal drifting in space. General Hayes gave the order for the human counterattack. Resistance fighters emerged from hiding with captured Zephyrian weapons and ships that had been reverse-engineered by human scientists. Steve Parker led squadrons of pilots and modified fighters, exploiting every weakness they had discovered in alien technology. The battle was fierce but brief. Zephyrian ships that had seemed invincible just hours before were now sitting targets. Human fighters darted between the disabled vessels, capturing some and destroying others. The hunters had become the hunted. Commander Veltar found himself trapped on his crippled flagship as human boarding parties fought their way through the corridors. His personal guards had collapsed when the quantum pulse hit, and his ship's weapons were completely offline. For the first time in his long military career, Veltar felt the taste of defeat. Dr. Emma Collins was part of the boarding party that reached the alien command deck. She walked through the twisted corridors of the ship, past unconscious Zephyrian soldiers, until she stood face to face with the commander who had overseen the occupation of Earth. Your empire is finished, Emma told Veltar as human soldiers took him prisoner. Your fleets are disabled across the galaxy and your subject species are rising in rebellion everywhere. You have 2 choices: surrender and learn to live in peace with other species, or face the same destruction you intended for us. Veltar looked at the human scientist with something approaching respect. His people had thought they understood all possible forms of intelligence and warfare, but humans had proven them wrong in every way. How, he asked. How did you develop such weapons so quickly? Because you never understood what you were fighting, Emma replied. You saw us as just another species to be conquered and enslaved, but human beings become stronger under pressure. Every cruelty you inflicted made us more determined. Every loss reminded us what we were fighting for. You didn't just attack our bodies and minds. You attacked our souls, and that was your greatest mistake. In the days that followed, the solar system was transformed once again. Humans freed from labor camps and research facilities emerged into sunlight they had not seen for years. Children, who had grown up under alien rule, learned what it meant to be truly free. The resistance fighters who had seemed like impossible heroes became teachers and leaders as humanity began to rebuild. President Carter addressed the human population from the ruins of Washington, D.C., where flowers were already growing among the rubble. We have not just won our freedom, she said. We have proven that the human spirit cannot be broken by any force in the universe. Now we must use this strength not for revenge, but to ensure that no other species suffers what we have endured. Humanity took its place among the stars not as conquerors but as liberators. They shared their quantum technology with other species, fighting for freedom, and helped establish a new galactic alliance based on cooperation rather than domination. The former slaves became the guardians of liberty throughout the galaxy. Captain Morrison established a new space exploration program dedicated to finding and freeing other enslaved worlds. General Hayes organized humanitarian missions to provide aid to species recovering from Zephyrian occupation. Dr. Collins founded research institutes where humans and aliens worked together to develop technology for peaceful purposes. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, crumbled within months as species after species declared their independence. Some Zephyrians, like Veltar, chose to learn from their defeat and work toward a more peaceful future. Others retreated to their homeworlds to contemplate how they had so completely misunderstood the nature of intelligent life. Years later, children would play in parks built where prison camps once stood. They would learn in schools about the dark time when their people were enslaved, but also about the courage and determination that set them free. The story of humanity's struggle would be told across the galaxy as proof that no matter how powerful an oppressor might seem, the desire for freedom could never be completely destroyed. Tony Martinez became a teacher who showed young people how to build things that would help rather than harm. Ben Taylor led construction crews that built new cities designed to welcome beings from any world. Maria Santos established communication networks that connected free worlds across the galaxy in bonds of friendship and mutual support. The final scene took place on Earth, where Nancy Foster's former students had built a memorial garden on the site of their old school. Children from many different species played together while their parents worked side by side on projects that would benefit everyone. The laughter of young voices echoed across worlds that had once known only silence and fear. Humanity had faced the ultimate test and emerged not just victorious but transformed. They had proven that they were indeed unbreakable, and in doing so, they had shown the entire galaxy what was possible when intelligent beings chose hope over despair, unity over division, and freedom over fear.